How do we feel as a community about big things? Well, it's a great question we ask all the time, but to be honest, it can be really hard to gauge what we feel on big topics as a community. We do get a pretty good idea every 4 years, and we got a pretty good idea on that topic after the general election earlier this month. But the data in terms of the politics and beliefs in our community, it's really limited to the winners and losers in the demographics. It is a decent gauge on what's going on in our community, but it doesn't spell out some of the more intricate details. So, last month, Boise State's Frank Church Institute conducted a survey on the perceptions of democracy, a big topic. Before we get into the data, though, I think it's important to first set this up. How did they get to this conclusion? Where did they get the data? Well, Boise State tells us that their poll was done between September 24th and October 26th of this year. It sampled 1,899 adults in Idaho, Montana, Nevada, Utah, and Wyoming. And the interviews were done online, and the data, this is important, the data was weighted to approximate a target sample in those states based on gender, age, their education, their race, ethnicity, and who they voted for in the 2020 presidential election. So here's what they found. It is quite interesting. Perceptions of democracy, fairness, and confidence related to the federal government are weak among adults in those 5 states that were surveyed. Of those adults, 55% say that they agree with the statement, quote, "The federal government works to benefit other groups of people, but not people like me." So what do we think about each other? Well, 80% of adults surveyed say that they believe Americans of different political viewpoints have a difficult time talking to one another about politics. 62% of those surveyed say that Americans, well, they rarely or never shift their own political opinions. And that could help explain why we're in this hyper-political sphere where people continue to double down and not have conversations sometimes. Now, those surveyed also say they worry about misinformation, and many distrust the legitimacy of the 2020 presidential election. If you're not listening, listen to this. 83% surveyed say that they are worried about the misrepresentation of facts, and they worry about misinformation. And stemming from those results, only 51% of adults in the 5-state survey believe that Vice President Joe Biden legitimately defeated President Trump in November 2020, making Joe Biden our current legitimate president. Half of adults surveyed say that people voting illegally happened a lot or some in the November 2020 U.S. presidential election. So those are some telling results from our community and communities from the West. And it's a really telling statistic about the results on the trust in our elections. Clearly, people don't trust them, but we think it's really important to reiterate that there is no legitimate evidence that the election in 2020 was manipulated to change the outcome to favor Joe Biden. Even here in Idaho, though, the 2020 election results were questioned and continue to be by some. Serious accusations were made by major Trump supporter Mike Lindell. He's the CEO of the Pillow Company. Now, Lindell claimed very publicly that votes cast for Trump had been illegally changed to votes for President Joe Biden, and that included here in the state of Idaho. Well, the state took that claim very seriously, and they did a comprehensive audit on the election results, and nothing Lindell or others claimed were remotely true. And a major red flag we want to point out in all of this of being false claims, Lindell said that he had evidence that all of Idaho's counties had had their election offices breached digitally, meaning that someone had hacked in to change something or another. Well, the problem here is nobody told Mr. Lindell that several Idaho counties, they're still working on paper during election season, where a digital hack, or whatever you want to call it, would be literally impossible.